Good morning. We are extremely pleased that you are here. It is good to come together for the purpose of co-creating. Do you agree?
Yes.
It really is co-creation at its best. We see you have dragged your physical bodies here. We have not. We're using someone else's. But we are all rendezvousing here for similar reasons. And if you're like us in your reason for being here, it's because you enjoy conscious movement forward. It's because you understand that you have come to where you are through so much living of life, more than you can recognize. And that as you join us here in this moment in time, that there is a collective consciousness that is really unique unto all of the universe, and that who you are and what you are about and the vibrational frequencies that are balancing within you is such a contribution to the all of what is. We appreciate your extending your consciousness into these physical bodies. Whew. That's big. And exploring the variety as you live your lives and coming to the awarenesses that you do moment by moment, day after day. It's such a nice thing when you are living life here, and it's an even nicer thing when you're doing that on purpose. But before you can really be purposeful about your life experience, you have to be in the vibrational vicinity of the whole of who you are, of that inner being part, that soul part, because you are a consciousness that still exists in what you may want to call the non-physical realm, in that non-physical existence from which this physical part of you has come. So there is a possibility, in fact a strong one for most humans, of in some moments, or even in a lot of moments, of you being a separate vibrational frequency, or a better word is a different vibrational frequency, or a better word is a more resistant vibrational frequency than that of your inner being. And what we mean by that is your inner being is pure positive energy. It is love energy only. It's pure positive energy. It's life energy only. It's well-being energy only, clarity energy only. And so sometimes, not really apart from your intention, when you decided to come into this physical body, you choose to focus upon something in a way, and sometimes the choice doesn't seem all that conscious to you. It's a sort of knee-jerk reaction, or maybe even a learned behavior. But sometimes your perception of life in some moment, about some subject, about some experience, is different enough from the perspective of your inner being that you can feel that separation. Now, separation is too strong a word, but you can feel the difference between you and who you really, really are. So our work, as we've been communicating with you through Esther in this way, is really about you wanting to know who you really are, how you fit into all of this, why you've come into this physical body, and what you're really about once you get here. And we're here to remind you that you came for the glorious experience of conscious expansion. You came for that satisfying conscious expansion. Now, you're going to expand anyway, because you just cannot bang around in your physical body with other people, with other experiences, without coming to awarenesses about what you prefer. And when that happens, a resource of non-physical energy begins flowing that sometimes you're not even aware is happening. All kinds of things are coming in support of what you are giving your attention to. And all of this energy flow, both what you receive and then redirect, no matter where you're receiving it from, whether you are receiving it from your connection to your source energy, or whether you're receiving it from something that you're observing. Maybe somebody having a hard time in their physical body is up close to you, and their complaints have gotten to you enough that you're perceiving them as they believe themselves to be, rather than you perceiving them as your inner being knows them to be. So sometimes, by virtue of what you're living, you find a way or a moment in time of perceiving something, some experience that causes a vibrational resistance within you. And when that happens, you feel negative emotion. So what we're really saying to you is that in any moment when there is any negative emotion happening within you, it always means that your perception is different from the perception of your source. Now, perception is such an interesting thing, and it's a word that Esther has found that as we listen to you, as you receive her word for what we are vibrationally offering to her, it's the best word. It's the best word for explaining to you that you, in your conscious awareness, in other words, when you are awake, are always in a state of some perception. By perception, we mean what you are seeing and hearing and smelling and tasting and touching. Certainly we mean that kind of perception, but we also mean what you think about whatever's going on, how you perceive it, how you believe it, how you expect it. In other words, what you're noticing and how you feel about it. So what you're noticing and how you feel about it is what includes the non-physical part of you, because the how you feel about it part is how you know whether you feel about it in the way that your inner being feels about it. You see what we're getting at? And whenever you're feeling negative emotion, you can know for sure this very certain thing. In the presence of negative emotion, your inner being has a different perspective than you do, a different perception than you do. Your perception is such an interesting thing, not just yours, but everybody else's. And not just yours about you, but yours about everybody you know. Your perceptions, doesn't really matter how you've come to them. Sometimes they've been inspired to you from the source within you. Sometimes they've been taught to you or hammered to you by teachers or peers or parents or friends. Sometimes you've witnessed experiences, and so you've come to conclusions. But what we want to ask you to ask of yourselves in the immediate days that follow this gathering is that when you are in a particular potent moment of perception, which means when you feel strong emotion, either positive or negative, that you stop and ask yourself to contemplate what you're perceiving and see if you can feel how your inner being is perceiving this moment in time. So we're just going to say it to you right out loud in really blunt and forthright terms. So much of what you perceive is bogus. And a lot of it, what you perceive about yourself, and a lot of what you perceive about the people around you. You misunderstand a lot of things. You jump to a whole lot of conclusions that do not serve you. Now, did you notice we didn't say a whole lot of conclusions that are wrong? We mean a whole lot of conclusions that don't serve you, because what you perceive is valid, because you created yourself into that perception, and this moment in time that you're perceiving is a manifested moment. So I want to tell you a story of something that happened to Esther a couple of weeks ago, so that you'll really understand what we mean about perspective, perception, perceiving, point of view, opinion, what you think is going on. Esther has a house and a guest house in Southern California, and she was there the other day, and she was sitting at her desk looking out of the window. Her desk is in her living room, and she put the desk there because it was the best place to see the ocean from where she was inside the house while she was working. And she hadn't been there in a while, and she hadn't really been paying much attention to the ocean. And she was working on some projects, and she looked up from her desk and looked out toward where the ocean should be, and couldn't see it, because with all of the spring rain, her own trees and bushes had grown out from the border of her property line and had obscured her view. And she thought it was funny that she hadn't even noticed that, but the ocean was gone. She knew it was still there, but she couldn't see it. The gardeners came later that day, and she said, I'm blocking my own ocean view with my own bushes. Now she is commonly asking them to trim the portocarpus trees, big tall trees that surround the property, so that the neighbors on the hill behind her have a better view over her. She is very conscientious about not blocking the view of her neighbors, and so it was funny to her that she'd completely obscured her own view. And she said to them, could you trim those trees so that I can see the ocean again? And they said, yes, we will. We'll trim them back. And then they said, but there's another tree down in the ravine that is also covering part of your view. And Esther said, well, take a look at it. She said, I only own half of this ravine, so make sure that it is on my property, but anything you can do to clear out my view, thank you so much. And so she went back to work. They went to work. She met a friend, went off to lunch, and was gone all afternoon. And when she came back, she went out on her deck and then into her living room, and then she looked out and the ocean was back. And she was so happy to see it. And then she looked out across the way and she saw something that put her heart right in her mouth. 2 big tree trunks cut all the way down to the ground, big ones. And she thought, oh, how could they have misunderstood me? I thought I was so clear. And then she thought, I am going to jail. So she fretted about it and tried not to think about it, and fretted about it and tried not to think about it, and then distracted herself with other things. And a day or two went by, and she was rationalizing, thinking, well, they must have misunderstood me, because I certainly didn't mean for that to happen. And this house where these tree trunks were near, very near, was under renovation. And Esther thought, maybe they are new owners and they don't know those trees were there. Didn't help her feel better, but she tried to think that thought for a day or two. And then she looked out one day, and there was a man in a suit standing out on the patio, and he was looking at those tree trunks, stumps, those tree stumps, all the way to the ground. And then he took his phone out and took a picture. And Esther thought, okay, I better go confess. She had never been to the house. She didn't know how to get there. It's across the ravine. Is the road down and I go up, or is it up and I go down? So she went down first, and it wasn't right. And so she went up around the loop and found her way in. And when she got there were several men working in the house doing plastering. And she said to them, there was a man out on the patio a few minutes ago in a business suit. Is he still here? And they said, no, he left. Well, on the several-minute drive, as Esther was trying to find him, she had practiced what she would say to him. I did that, and I'm so sorry, and I didn't mean to do it, and I'll do whatever you want me to do. I'll plant new trees. I'll plant your whole yard. It was a complete misunderstanding, but he wasn't there, so she didn't confess, and she went home and practiced her speech.